in chapter 1. We skipped when we were teaching just because this section is not super important for you to memorize as far as I'm concerned. You need it a lot for your geometry practice, so we'll use it again at the end of the year when we get to term 3. But if you want to look over these different properties, you can do that. Let's quickly just go through. So if they give you something and it says name the property used, when you multiply or divide or whatever, use an operation, you would substitute. You would be using substitution because 4 times 2 equals 8. So I'm substituting 4 times 2 and putting an 8 instead. So this property is substitution. And then we have 8 minus 8. Which if we look down here is the additive inverse, which means that when you have a number and you take away the same number, that property says that it would equal 0. So we've replaced 8 minus 8 by 0. Here again, it's multiplication, so this is substitution. And then anytime you you add a number by 0, this is called an additive identity because it doesn't change at all when you add 0 to something. So this is additive identity. Over here again, division here would be substitution. Then we have 5 minus 5, which is again the additive inverse. Then when we have 5 minus 5, that's the additive inverse. Then we have the multiplicative inverse, which says that if we multiply something by its reverse or flip, then it would give us 1. 6 multiplied by 0 is 0. This is multiplicative property of 0 right here. Anytime you multiply something by 0, it equals 0. And then 1 plus 0 would be your additive identity again, because anytime you add 0 to something, it stays the same. Okay, if we move to the second page, commutative property and associative property are actually a little more important than the previous two. You might see something commutative or associative property on there. Commutative property says that we can switch the order of something. So if I have 4 plus 8, that's the same as 8 plus 4. And if I have 7 multiplied by 11, that's the same as 11 multiplied by 7. So this would work for multiplying or adding as commutative property. Associative property means that what I'm associating with together in grouping symbols can also change if you're talking about addition or subtraction. Addition or multiplication. So here I'm grouping A and B, but that would be the same as if I group B and C because it's all addition. So A plus B, 3 plus 5. If I do that first and then add it to 7, that would be the same as if I do 5 plus 7 and add that to 3. So this is the associative property, what I'm associating things with. And this one down at the bottom says Raphael is buying furnishings for his first apartment. He buys a couch for $300, lamps for $30.50, a rug for $25.50, and a table for $50. Find the total cost. So again, you have a calculator, so you can add all these together. What they wanted you to do is add the two things together to make it easier. So if I add these two that have decimals, I would get 56. And then I can add these two together to get 110 and 300 plus 110 to get 410. But you have a calculator, so do it in the calculator. And then example number 3 says to use the properties and name the property in each step. So here again, they want you to, without using a calculator, make it easier for yourself. So if I did 2.9 multiplied by 10, that would get rid of this decimal and make it just 29, which would be easier to multiply by 4 than something that has a decimal. So 29 times 4 would give me 116, which this is the commutative property because I multiplied these first. And this one again, if I multiply 5 over 3 by 3, this would give me just 5, which makes it easier to multiply 25 and 2 and then by 5. So this one would be 250, commutative property, multiplicative inverse, and associative property are what I used. Okay, so that was a very quick explanation. Hopefully you won't see this on that test, but if you do, I would focus on commutative and associative property when you're studying. Okay, if we move on to lesson 1-4, this is the distributive property. This is a very important lesson. 1-4, you have to be able to distribute in order to solve equations and write equations and all of those types of things. So let's do the guided practice for lesson 1-4. So if we look at this one, it says a group of 3 adults, an 11-year-old, and 2 children under 10 years old are going to a baseball game. Write and evaluate an expression to determine the cost of tickets for the group. So we notice that we have to look it up here for our prices. It says that adults cost $5 to go to the game. Children under 12, well, 12 and under would be $3. Groups of 10 or more are $2, and if you're a senior, which is 65 years old and over, then you would pay $3. So if we look in our problem, we have adults, so we have 5, and we have 11-year-olds and 2 children under 10. The 11-year-old is under 12, and so are the 2 children under 10. So all 3 of these children are going to pay $3. So when we write our expression here, the adult tickets we said are 5, and the children under 12 are 3. So we have 3 adults at $5 and 3 children 12 and under at $3. So when we multiply 3 and 5, we get 15. 3 and 3 is 9 to give us $24 total because all of these are under 12. Okay, 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D say use the distributive property to rewrite and then evaluate. So they want us to make it easier. If it were on the test, though, you could put these in the calculator and solve that way. Hopefully they won't make you split it up. But if we wanted to rewrite it, we could split it so that it's easier to multiply. 304 is a difficult number, but 304 are both easy to multiply by 15. So if we split 304 into 300 plus 4 and then multiply, it makes it easier. 15 times 300 gives me 4,500 because 15 times 3 is 45 and there's 2 zeros, so 200, 2 zeros. 15 multiplied by 4 gives me 60. And then I can add these very easily and get 4,560 for my final answer. Here again, I've separated 2 and the 1/2 into 2 and plus 1/2. So 44 multiplied by 2 gives me 88. 44 multiplied by 1/2 is 22 because half of that is 22. And then you can add those pretty easily to get 110. This one I've separated 210 into 210. 5 multiplied by 200 is 1,000. 5 multiplied by 10 is 50. So 1,050 would be my answer. 52 is the same as 50 plus 2. So 17 times 50 is 850. 17 times 2 is 34. And then these are pretty easy to add. 0 and 4 is 4. 5 and 3 is 8. And then 8 for my 884 for my answer. All right, example number 3 is actually using the distributive property. This is probably going to be your most important in this section. So when we use the distributive property, we multiply the outside number by both terms inside the parentheses. So this was 2 multiplied by 8 is 16. 2 multiplied by 4n gives me 8n. On number 3b, I have -6 outside the parentheses. So I'm going to multiply -6 times r and get -6r. Then -6 times 3g gives me -18g. Use your calculator for -6 times 3 so that you don't mess up the sign because this is negative. And then put the g on it. And then -6 times -1t. I don't see the -1, but there is a -1 there. So if you want to write the -1, go ahead and do that. -6 multiplied by -1 is +6, and then it has a t. So this is my final answer because these are all different letters, so I can't combine anything. This one has a -3 outside the parentheses, so I'm multiplying -3 times 2 is -6. -3 times -5q will give me a +15q. This is my final answer. And this one, -4 times -8 is 32. -4 times -3m is +12m. So this would be my final answer on that one. Okay, moving on to page 227, example number 4. Here again, this one is the combining like terms. This is really important as well. So distributive property up here is important. Combining like terms are important as well. So I have 6n minus 4n. These are like terms because they have an n. So 2n is what I get. B squared minus 13b plus 13. B squared and b are not like terms because this one has the squared and this one does not. So I cannot do anything on this one, and so I would just write simplified. On this one, it has 4y cubed plus 2y minus 8y plus 15. So I can see that the y cubed is different than the rest, but this one is y and so is this one. So I can add the numbers in front. 2 plus negative 8 gives me negative 6, and the y stays the same. The 4y cubed, just put it at the beginning because it's a bigger exponent, and then you have your negative 6y and then the plus 5 at the end. Usually we put the exponents from big to small. And then on this one, 7a is a like term with negative 2a, so 7a plus negative 2 would give me negative 5a. The negative 6a squared doesn't have any like terms, so I leave it. And the positive 4 doesn't have any like terms, so I leave that. Again, I put them in order from least to greatest as far as the exponents go. And then the bottom part on the next page is talking about writing expressions and then solving from there. So we have to write the expression for these verbal words, and then we're going to simplify from there. So the expression said 5 times, which means multiplication, the difference, which is subtraction, of q squared, that would mean we have a 2 exponent, and r plus 8 times, which is times, the sum, which is plus, of 3q and 2r. So first we're going to do 5 times the difference, okay? If it's 5 times something that's not like a letter or a number, you're going to have 5 and then parentheses. So it's 5 multiplied by a difference, which is subtraction, and it's the difference of q squared, which is here, and r, plus 8 times a sum. Here again, it's times a sum, so we need parentheses again, so it's 8 times the sum, which is addition, of 3q and 2r. So here's my expression, and to simplify, I'm going to distribute the 5. 5 times q squared is 5q squared. 5 times negative r is negative 5r. 8 times 3q is 24q. 8 times 2r is 16r. Notice I put plus and minus signs between. If it's a negative when I multiply, I would put minus. If it's positive, I would put plus. You do have to have those between. Then I combined the like terms. The negative 5r and the positive 16r would give me 11r. The q has no like terms, and the q squared has no like terms. So I'm going to put 5q squared plus 24q and then the r term. Okay, at least do page 29, 1 through 10. But be sure you can do page 29, 11 through 39 also on this one, because this is a really important section for you to be able to do.